Please join me in welcoming on our stage Lambert.
Thank you. So can everyone hear me okay? Yes? Good. Are you all looking forward to learning lots about Agile today? Yes, good. Who here is working in an Agile context at the moment? Who works for an Agile company? Loads of people. Great stuff. Cool. So if you were here last year, you know that I have this slight sort of weird thing at the start of every talk where I like to take a picture of the audience because my kids, 3 little boys, they say, "Daddy, why do you do this weird thing of standing up in front of people and talking?" Because it's quite scary. So I'm just going to take a selfie. I located the best spot for a selfie to get the whole audience. If you're not supposed to be here, or you're wanted by the police, just cover your face. Like that, okay? Ready? Everybody happy? On the count of 3, what should we say? Should we say, "Works on my machine"? We did that last time. I'm a tester, you know, got to. Everyone happy? So on the count of 3, works on my machine. 1, 2, 3.
Works on my machine.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for indulging in that nonsense. So, one thing that we didn't actually mention in the start, and I thought I would do that, is if there is a fire alarm which is not being scheduled today, then do the sensible thing and squeal and run to the nearest door, okay? That's what I shall be doing. So I'm going to talk to you about releasing agility. Okay? Agility can't be bought. You can't just miraculously turn a company agile. You have to release it at a pace that makes sense for the company. And for many years I did very slow, boring and ineffective software development. A few people nodding sagely. The problem was that the companies that I worked for were relying on this slow, boring and ineffective software testing and development to ship the software that we were building. So it's no surprise then that we didn't ship that software very often, if at all. The reason we did this was because we believed that we knew what we were building at the start of the program, and we knew that if we just put it into a plan and we put it into a spec and we just built against that, that eventually following the plan would lead to results. Positive results. But here's what actually happened when the project kicked off. The first thing we do is we get the specification, and as a tester, I would go to my test case management system of doom, and I would have a look at what test cases we currently had. And then I would have a look at what test cases we needed to write to cover the spec. Because obviously covering the spec 100% is the goal of software testing. And then I would need to work out how many test cases I had and how long it would take to run. And to do this, I just used a very super simple magical calculation that worked on the assumption that every single tester could deliver 10 test cases worth of work every single day. And who in here is a tester? Put your hand up. A few? Okay, cool. Good. Not many. Who's a project manager, by the way, before I insult that? On the front, all right. And the rest of you, developers, agile coaches, scrum masters, all of the above. Okay, cool. So, assuming I had 4,000 test cases to run, and I had a team of 10 testers, and each one could do 10 test cases per day, it would give me a total of 40 days. That's how long it would take to test the specification to 100%. But as you know, you should always have contingencies, so stick 10, 20% on top of that, 44, 48 days. Armed with that calculation, and armed with that number, I would head to the project office to deliver the good news to the project managers. And they would ponder the date and the time and the duration, and then they would laugh. And they would say, no, I think you're confused. You have 20 days to deliver the full testing of the specification. Now, you can start crying, Rob, it's fine. 20 days is all you're going to have. So I would leave the room, wondering why I was asked to estimate in the first place. So what the project team would do is they would take all of these shady estimates from all of these different teams, and they would put them all together on a Gantt chart of devastation the size of a small country. And they would print it on loads of different pieces of paper, and they would stick it on the wall for everybody to enjoy. And then the fun would begin. Whilst the programmers were here building the software, the testers were writing test plans and test cases that nobody cared about. Realizing nobody cared about that, we would crack on writing all the different test cases. The programmers would swallow all of their time because they had shady estimates, technical problems, change requests, all the usual stuff. We were eating into everybody's contingency. The project manager spent all day, every day, reprinting the Gantt chart of devastation and posting it to the wall for everybody to see. And then eventually, we would get some software. And boom, it would explode and cause a series of small fires, injuring several operations engineers. And the testers would throw the software back to the developers with bug reports full of scorn, disappointment, and rude words. And the programmers would work on trying to fix it, but the problem code was right back here at the start. And since then, the developers left, and nobody knows why they built the program that way. So they keep going through testing, development, testing, developing, testing, and all the way through delivering against the plan was now our only single goal. And then eventually we get some software to test, and we test it. And the Gantt chart of devastation that was printed on the wall would tell us we were miles behind hitting the deadline when we would ship this beauty into production. So we did the only thing possible. The managers bought everybody pizza and asked them to work the weekends because the plan was the only goal. And then eventually we get towards the end of the project and we'd be getting close to the release date and somebody somewhere would say, ship it. And we would ship it, even though we were only 80%, 7% complete. And then the customers would throw the software back at us and say, we're not accepting that, and they would hate us. And we go through the whole cycle again and again and again. Who in here has been through this cycle? Everyone. And we needed help. We needed help desperately. Testing was the bottleneck now, right at the very end of this cycle. So what did we do? We asked everybody in the business to become a tester. If you could breathe and you could click a mouse, you became a tester. And doesn't that say something about the kind of testing and development and programming that we were doing? Then eventually, finally, at last, we would ship this monstrosity into production where the customers would finally accept it and say, you know what, we still hate you, but at least we've got the software. It didn't always match their expectations though. This is what they requested. And if you notice all the way through the presentation, there's lots of lovely pictures of your beautiful city. This, I believe, is called Sky Tower. It has another name which I will not mention. So I am right with that, okay. But this is what the customer requested. And look what we would deliver to them. Yes. But they'd accept it, And then finally, at the end of the project, everybody would get involved in what we called a sunset review meeting, where we'd all go into a meeting room and decide what went well, what didn't go so well. And in every single one of those meetings, somebody would say, I can't believe it took so long to ship the software. How slow are we? And someone else would say, boring. I don't mind helping out with testing, but my goodness, that is boring. And someone else would say, we're ineffective. We have clever people, and this is the best that we can do. And at the end of the meeting, everyone would go away and say, yep, we are never going to run another project in that way again. We'd take a few days off, we'd all come back the following week, we'd start the next project in exactly the same way again. But it doesn't have to be that way. So when I joined NewVoiceMedia about 8 years ago, we were just in the throes of releasing our final version, version 5. Okay, this was a big bang release. And we never wanted to do that again. So we refused and we accepted that we were going to have to do something differently. We were never going to do big releases again. And when people ask me why not, does anyone know where this is? It's in
Next to Monopole.
Monopole. Me and Dan were sat in the bar and we took a great picture of a taxi speeding past the Monopole. Great. Anyway, our customers and market demands move too fast. And when your market moves fast, your release process has to keep up. We were in a very competitive market. If we did not improve our release process, if we stuck to the year-long releases, then we would be outpaced by somebody who could do it faster. The second thing is customers, and this is Kevin, by the way. This is Kevin Harris. He is one of our testers, and as you can see, he is sad. He is sad. Do you know why he's sad? Not because he's a tester. Don't use that joke. We've all been there. He's sad because major releases make us and our customers sad. And why is that? Because in this giant Gantt chart of devastation, there is a huge amount of code. And there's a lot of code equals a lot of change. And a lot of change equals a huge amount of risk. Risk is not good. Also, if you're only going to release your software once a year, you have a release process that's not tried or tested, and it becomes this giant project on its own. When you release weekly, which is what we were going for, it just becomes business as usual. Not to say it's easy, but it becomes a little bit easier. And the third reason was the ultimate feedback loop. You don't know whether or not you're actually building the correct thing until your customers are using it. And so that's what we call the ultimate feedback loop, and we wanted that to be as short as possible. So we set a goal of weekly releases. And I'm sure you're all very excited now to find out how we did it. Are you? Yes. Cool. So how do we do it? Two things, and then that's it. Open to declare victory, walk out this room. Very, very easy. I can't believe people don't do this. I don't understand why agile transformations do not work, because all you have to do is build strong foundations. And then the second thing, just iterate and adapt. Thank you very much. But it's not that easy though, is it? Is anyone here in the mix of an agile transformation at the moment? Trying to go agile? A few people nodding, yes, okay. If it was as easy as building strong foundations and adapting and iterating, everybody would be agile, but they're not, okay? And some companies never succeed. And the reason is because they're trying to release agility too fast. And it comes down to two guiding principles that we stuck to, and we still stick to today at NewVoiceMedia. One is that our people are the engine for success. Without good people, we have nothing. It doesn't matter whether we do stand-ups, whether we do retrospectives, it makes no difference if you don't have good people. And the second thing is, they're only going to be successful if they work in a system that supports them. And that system that we talk about belongs to management. Okay, so if you don't have buy-in from management, you're unlikely to succeed with Agile. So, without further ado, the 10 elements that I believe are involved in going Agile. The first 5 are really from an individual's perspective in the team. The following 5 are really from a manager's perspective. But every single one of these 10 belongs to management. It's management's responsibility to make the environment that people thrive in. So we're going to go through those, don't worry, people scribbling furiously, we are going to go through these, you will get a copy of the slides afterwards. So, what is the purpose? Does everyone here know the purpose of their business? Does everyone know the purpose of the team that they're in? What are you there for? Money, some people are saying, yes. Could be, but we knew what our purpose was. 7 or 8 years ago, we set a vision for weekly releases, and we knew what the purpose was, to rapidly deliver software to our customers while growing and scaling Agile across the UK and Poland. The mission, weekly releases. What are our values? We had some very, very strong values, and I'll show you those in a minute. And then what are our problems? If you don't know your problems, you're never going to succeed, because you won't be able to solve them. You won't be able to go Agile, you won't be able to release agility, you won't be able to do any of the good stuff in Agile if you don't understand the problems that you currently have. So these are DevOps values that we still have today, and if you join NewVoiceMedia, you get the inducted part of this and you get to talk through this. These are the values. We care about the future, we teach and learn, we own the solution, we share the pain, we're open and honest, and we enjoy what we do, hopefully. So if you join a new team, do you always know what's expected of you? Does somebody sit you down in the first week and say, you're here as a Scrum Master and this is what we expect of you? A few people nodding no. So what do management expect of me, and how am I going to help us become more agile? So we made this very, very clear in the early days. Strong foundations. We set up objectives, management through behavior, feedback. Super, super important. Number 3, when you join a team, how do I progress my career? We're all super successful. We're here at this conference today. We have an interest in becoming better individuals, better at what we're doing, changing roles, moving into different disciplines. You need to know that when you join a company, you have a path that you can follow. Does everyone here genuinely have a career path mapped out for themselves? A few people? Yeah. Very quiet. Do you need more jokes? I could do. I can't do more jokes, actually.
Please no.
No, please no. I've got into trouble a few times. So, clarity over career progression. When you join our business, you get to hear about a career progression. This is super important in any team. When you're building a team, people need to know how they're going to progress. They need to know why somebody's a senior, what makes somebody a senior and somebody a junior. And it's all about behaviors. And this is why it belongs to management. Managers should always be asking for more. They should be delivering coaching plans, career development, and clarity over the career progression. This is all about building good, strong, cultural foundations. Number 4, how am I measured? Everybody needs to know how they're measured. Otherwise, how do you know whether or not you're succeeding? So team measures, we had no targets. There were no targets. We said weekly releases, but we had no targets around that. As soon as you set targets, you set an arbitrary ceiling that people go to, and also those targets are often based on nothing more than a finger in the air. Gantt charts. No offense to project managers, genuinely, mostly made up of targets that people have plucked out of the air. Okay? So, team measures, cycle time, velocity, feedback from the customers. Clear visibility of the roadmap, and you'll enjoy it. That last line, if you're not having fun with it, be done with it. It's from a hip-hop band called Flame Griller, and I think it sums it up perfectly. If you're not having fun at work, you're probably not doing a good job. Okay? And that's management's fault. So who will help me? You also need to know who's going to help you when you do an agile transition. It's not easy. It's not easy at all to try and build a team and to grow globally and to go from 8 people in, when I joined 8 years ago, to what we now, about 95 over dev across the UK and Poland. It's big growth. You have to know who's going to help you, okay? And that's what we did. We tried to make communities of interest really good, show and tells, shone the light on good people doing good work, and paired people up, okay? And then part 2, this belongs to management. Don't worry, we're nearly finished, okay? And then you can go and have coffee and we can crack on. Although, I think looking at the clock, I'm actually way ahead of time. But I shall slow down and talk slowly. Okay. Number 6, people need a plan too. Okay, so when you're doing the Agile transition, one of the things that we found was people were relying too heavily on all the tactics and the strategies around Agile. So we were doing stand-ups, we were doing all those sorts of things, test-driven development, BDD, you name it. Buzzword bingo, we had them all. The problem was we didn't necessarily focus on the individuals in the team and help them develop the skills that they needed to as we go. You can't suddenly go Agile and expect everyone in the team to get what is happening, to understand how the processes work, to understand the techniques and the technologies. People need growth, training, support and encouragement. That's what management's job is, which is why these last 5 all belong to management. And we had a simple saying that when people leave NewVoiceMedia, they will be the best candidate on the market, which means that we've hired the best people, we've coached them, trained them, developed them well, and if they choose to leave, they will be super employable. As it happens, interestingly, very few people leave our organisation. So we invested in management training, we truly do care about teams, we focus on behaviours, what do people actually do, say, etc. How many times have you read a CV and this person looks awesome, unbelievable, and then when you meet them you're like, really? Okay? It doesn't matter what you say you can do, it matters what you actually do, which is what management on behaviours is so important. And our agility was never released faster than our skills could cope with. There's a bank I know in London, and they've spent somewhere in the region of about £26 million trying to go Agile. Okay? And they have not succeeded. Every agency, consultancy, big company you've heard of has been in there, fleeced them of a lot of money, and they are no nearer to Agile than they were 2 or 3 years ago. I went in and did a similar talk to this, and the guy asked me, he said, are we ever going to succeed with agility? And I said, no. Okay, and you could tell immediately because the room was full of people who didn't want to go Agile. Never going to succeed. But they're still spending money. There's a very big company in there at the moment, and I know 1 or 2 people on that project, and they are struggling massively because they have not built the foundations for Agile to succeed. They're trying to buy agility. You can't buy agility. We must hire and retain the best people. Okay, this is strategically a manager's most important job, is to hire good people. Don't rush it. Don't jump into this without thinking through whether this is the right candidate. So you need to know how to do good interviews. You need to hire managers that know how to manage. You need to hire people that know how to work in a team. If you get the wrong people in a team, it is draining, soul destroying, and emotionally not good for either side of the party. Okay? So we make it incredibly hard to get a job, which is good because it means the bar's high. Improve the recruitment process, we made it very hard to get a job, which talks about we keep good people learning. Good people want to keep learning, so you give them more and more and more opportunities to learn. Also made super helpful by the fact that our Polish office is no longer being run out of Piotr's flat. I cannot believe that we managed to hire Anna, who went for a job interview in a block of flats where she was interviewed by 3 men in a room, and rumour has it that next door there was some banging nosebleed hardcore going on, and she joined us. And she worked in the office with Piotr and Jacob and a few others, and even during the first round of our growth here in Poland, we were still in the office, so we had more people in the office and truly it was safe to be in there. Also, I'm not entirely sure that Piotr cleaned the office as often as he probably should have, which was evidenced by the fact that when me and Dan came over once, about 4 years ago, Dan popped his bag on the table on top of the tablecloth, and then when he came to take his bag away, he pulled the tablecloth off because his bag had stuck to it. But, you know, that was what growth was like. We were also, in those first rounds, doing job interviews in a hotel room. Yes, it was that bad. This is Hotel Invite, room 411 was where we conducted almost all of our interviews for the second round of growth. It was a baking hot summer, there was no air conditioning, and literally everyone in the interviews was sat there like, I'm not going to move because it's too hot. Let's just talk this through. But it's made easier by the fact we're not doing that anymore. And this is some minimalistic artwork from the very first round of interviews in a very shady office on the edge of town, where almost everything around it was crumbling. But we still hired people. We still do have a challenge though for our UK office. For those of you who've never been to the UK or been to where we are in Basingstoke, it is a big challenge to get people to come to our office. Basingstoke is not glamorous. It's very near to London, which means people have options to go to London, where they can probably earn a little bit more. But we've succeeded. We've done okay. At one point, I remember a brainstorming session all the managers had, well, how can we attract people to Basingstoke? And one of the genuine ideas we were going to run with was to create our own tourist information site where we would post nothing but very, very positive things about Basingstoke and point candidates at it and say, great, it's awesome. Okay, so number 8, this is really important. So 90% of the success of any business is down to the processes and the systems. As well as you may think you're awesome and great, and no doubt you all are, if you go to a business that has shocking processes and systems, you will not succeed. Okay, you may be good enough to change the processes, which is great, which is why we hire the best people. We let them improve the process, but we're not blind to the fact that around 90% of the success is down to the processes, the habits, the systems, the communication, all the stuff that supports good people, which is why you need good people, but you need to put them in an environment for success. And that success belongs to management. We don't do any development work or testing work, we just manage people, which sounds really dull. But 70% of our time is probably spent improving the system. The other 30% is doing one-to-one career coaching management. Okay, that's the job of management, to improve the system. If managers aren't improving it, who is? The employees, but they're individual contributors at the same time. They're trying to run a development team, run sprints, develop code, test, etc. They don't have necessarily the time or the skills or the inclination or the power, role power, to fix processes. Managers do, and if they don't, probably shouldn't be a manager. So number 9, we must study, improve, then bring in technology. As technologists, our immediate solution is technology. Okay, there's a problem in third world Africa. Technology, laptops. Has anyone read about what happened when we shipped laptops for everybody? About 10 years ago, somebody had this great idea to give every child in Africa a laptop. Amazing idea. The problem is they shipped all these laptops to Africa, and Africa doesn't have the power supply, it has no internet connection, and these laptops just collected dust in the corner in cupboards of schools. And when people went to speak to the head teacher, said, why is this not working? They're saying, we don't know how to build these things, we don't know how to support them, we don't know how to use these things, there's not enough power, we get electricity for 45 minutes each day. We'd rather spend that teaching kids in the classroom. Okay, technology does not solve every problem. In fact, technology makes problems worse. Technology amplifies what is underneath it. So if you have rubbish data in your CRM system, the CRM system is just amplifying that rubbish data. It makes it quicker, harder to find, and that's why you should always improve the process first. 5 whys is one of the ways that we do that. Ask why 5 times to problems, so you can identify the root causes and the process failures that happen. Okay, be careful about technology. Very, very easy to go to the market and buy a solution to a problem you don't have. Okay, you have to understand those problems. And that's why this also belongs to management. And then number 10, we are people, and we like to be treated as people. We should treat people as we wish to be treated. That's with respect. No command and control is required. It doesn't have to be that way. That's an old way of management and thinking. It's becoming eradicated from many of the technology companies that we all look at, Facebook, Google, etc. They don't do command and control. Okay, no humiliation-based management. There's no need to humiliate people. There's no need to call them out in public. There's no need to do any of that stuff. It's not welcome. No carrots and sticks required. The only motivation that works is intrinsic, from yourself. Okay? So what we try to do is we try to set inspiring goals and targets. Not targets, I should not use that word. Inspiring visions of what we want it to be. So you can imagine if you're releasing yearly, we set an inspiring vision to be releasing weekly. And that inspiring vision was why people came to work for us. We talked about it, we hired against it, we told people this is what we are going to do. And it pulled people towards it. Motivation pushes people, and that's why it should be from yourself. You should feel motivated in the morning to help with some sort of intrinsic pulling glorious thing that you're contributing to above and beyond yourself. There's a very good book called Drive by Dan Pink. If you want a recommendation of a book, there's 3 things that people need in life to be successful. One of them is a purpose, which is that intrinsic, not the intrinsic, sorry, the guiding thing that you're going for. What are you here for? Why do we exist? The second thing they need is autonomy. They need to be left alone. Good people should be left alone. They should be telling us what to do. It's not management's job to tell people what to do. And then the third thing they need is mastery. They need to become really good at what they're doing. You get those 3 things, you have a very high performing team. Okay, no shouting, usual stuff. If you treat people like people, they'll get the job done, and people will be happy, motivated, engaged, bought into working against a bigger goal than themselves. And that is how you do an agile transition. And I should say, you cannot rush it. Agility can only be released when you're ready. It took us nearly a year and a half to go from yearly releases to monthly releases. And then it took us about another 6 months to go from monthly releases to weekly releases. And weekly releases were brutally painful for about 6 months until we automated bits of it, and they're still tricky now. We're still not there. We're still on our journey. You can't rush agility. So, first 5, really, individual stuff. Why are you here? What's expected of you? How do I progress? How am I measured? Who's going to help me? They are the key questions every employee should be asking. And then the final 5 are people need a plan too. We must hire and retain the best people. We must develop good systems and habits. That's how Agile works, through habits, stand-ups, retrospectives, BDD, TDD, these are all habits. We must study and improve, and then only then bring in technology, once we've improved the system. And then finally, we must treat people like people. And this was only possible after leaving the DevOps function and moving sideways to HR. Because while I was in the mix, I was absolutely certain it was because we did test-driven development, because we did BDD, because we hired good people. I was certain it was all of the tactics, and it wasn't. When you jump out of a team, you realize that what we did was we built strong foundations, and we hired good people. And that, I believe, is applicable in every single company. And there's a beautiful picture of your town square in summer. And with that, I'm going to say thank you and open up to any questions.